Hello, friends. Today I'm again talking about the 8 meannesses of the heart that Sri Yukteswar talks about in his book, The Holy Science. And these meannesses encumber the heart. They keep it small and contracted. And so what we need to do is to work to eradicate these attitudes and feelings from our consciousness so that our hearts are open and can shine with the light of God. Sri Yukteswar assures us that once we cleanse the heart, then, as the Bible says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And that's what leads to happiness. That's what leads to divine joy. To be able to see God in everything and everyone. And to become one with that divine light of God. That's our destiny. So we need to do the work to cleanse our hearts and make them pure. And today, one of the meanness that I will be discussing is race prejudice. And this is, of course, very pertinent to our lives right now. There's been so much social unrest and suffering these past months with the coronavirus and protests over senseless killings, the Black Lives Matter movement. It's been a very difficult time. And I like to remind myself that we are at the beginning of Dwapara Yuga. We're coming out of the dark period of Kali Yuga. And Sri Yukteswar refers to that state of consciousness that is Kali Yuga by saying the dark mind harbors misconceptions about everything. There's a touch of humor in there. And that is the Kali Yuga sense of self, sense of the world, that consciousness of just being clouded in the mind is something that we collectively on this planet are trying to overcome. And part of what happens in Dwapara Yuga, rising out of Kali Yuga consciousness, is that all the darkness of Kali Yuga is exposed. All of it starts to come to light. So you see in the past 50 years how much, for example, domestic violence has come up in consciousness. People are aware that domestic violence happens. Pretty much before that time, it was hushed up. People didn't believe it was real. No one wanted to talk about it. And it was hidden through the ignorance of Kali Yuga. And the same is true for race prejudice. It's been simmering in the subconscious of our collective consciousness, and now it's coming out again. And it has burst through, of course, many times through the Civil War, through the movement of the 60s. Interestingly, I've been reading a book about the generation of people who created the Declaration of Independence, our Constitution in America. those band of brothers and sisters who brought this country into reality, it was quite a struggle. And interestingly, though they fought back, though they had the Boston Tea Party in which they threw millions of dollars worth of tea into the water to protest the taxation without representation that England was imposing on the colonies. Despite their rebellious, renegade behavior, that act, which pretty much started the Revolutionary War, the Boston Tea Party, that act was the final act of desperation. They had tried all diplomatic means to come to some agreement that was tenable. They had tried every legal means. And I find that very important because this country is a country based on law, not based on privilege and anarchy or any of those sorts of things. It's based on law. And just as Ruth Bader Ginsburg fought for the rights of women, we all need to fight for the rights of every person, every immigrant, every person of color, every man, woman, and child in this country. That's what our founding fathers fought for. There's part of this book that I'm reading talks about Richard Henry Lee, not to be mixed up with his son, Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee headed the Confederate forces in the Civil War, defending, among other things, the right to have slaves. Well, Robert E. Lee's father, Richard Henry, was very much against slavery, and he fought long and hard to not have slavery in the colonies, and suggested many creative means to try to keep people with slaves out. He even suggested exorbitant taxes so that no one would be able to afford to have slaves. But unfortunately, the coalition of the colonies was so tenuous that leaders like Jefferson and Washington, who did not want to have slaves, who personally freed their slaves upon their deaths and other times too, they had to compromise. So it was a very difficult situation, and that was just one thing that they couldn't do in that moment. And it's pathetic, really, because if Richard Henry Lee had had his way, perhaps we would not have so much struggle that we have now. The individual needs to be taken at his own merit, and each needs to be given the rights and privileges of a citizen of this great country. We need to make sure that everyone has those rights. So it's been wonderful for me to think in terms of a new race emerging from America, because it's the melting pot of the world. It's made up of immigrants from Europe, Asia, India, everywhere across the planet. There's so much potential. I was reading a little book by Luther Burbank. Burbank was a great friend of Paramhansa Yogananda, our guru. And Burbank created over 800 new varieties of fruits and flowers and vegetables. He's especially noted for the spineless cactus that he was able to create. So Burbank wrote a wonderful book entitled The Training of the Human Plant. And in that book, he talks about what an incredible opportunity we have in America to combine races. And he said in his work in creating hybrid plants, joining different strains made the plant much, much stronger and had all these positive effects. And so he even listed out all the different countries in a particular year who had immigrants coming to this country, and he was thrilled at the prospect of this new race emerging in America that would be stronger and better and able to accomplish great things. Similarly, there's an Irish lady, her name is Lorna Byrne, and she has seen angels her whole life, physically sees angels that no one else can see. And she too talked about how every single person who has been drawn to leave their home country and move to America to live here has been guided by an angel, because America, by God's will, is creating a new race of people. So this melting pot of America also has a divine purpose, the creation of a new race of people. And we need to hold our democracy very dear as the gift from God that it is. And it comes to us, we have inherited it through the sacrifice of great men and women throughout our history who have paid dearly for that freedom that we enjoy through their blood, through their tremendous will, through their sacrifice. So I've thought that it is actually a very good idea to offer our prayers to God, to save our democracy, to strengthen it, to help each person to lift their consciousness so that we can rise above this meanness of the heart, which is race prejudice, and realize that all men and women are created equal under God. And each, as Burbank would point out, has strengths that can be added to the whole, that we can emerge stronger from all of the tests we are experiencing right now. This band of brothers and sisters that help to forge this great country, I think it would be wise to send a prayer to them, ask them to help us in this time of trouble, to steer us clear, to guide us through the will of God to a higher age. God bless you.